Hey there, and welcome to episode 111, where I welcome back Ayurvedic Dr. Victor Briere to discuss all things Kapha, and in particular, Kapha congestion, how it happens, why it happens, and what we can do to pacify this Kapha congestion that can occur both physically and mentally. So please stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Hello and welcome back to Elements of Ayurveda. Today, I'm very happy to welcome back Ayurvedic Dr. Victor Briere. Hello, Victor. How are you today?
Hey, Colette. I'm doing very well today. How are you?
I'm great, and thank you for joining us again. And the reason Victor's back on the show again is to continue our discussion on the dosha imbalances. The last time we covered in episode number 102 was pitta burnout. And in this one, we're going to talk about Kapha congestion. So, Victor, are you ready to delve deep into Kapha?
Ready to delve deep into Kapha, which by its nature is very deep.
That's very true. So let's start, as we did in the Pitta Burnout one, with a Kapha 101. For people who are new to Ayurveda, I think that's a great place to start.
Sure. So Kapha 101. Kapha has the qualities of being cold, sticky, slimy, heavy, and unctuous. Unctuous meaning like mucus-like substance, and oily. So you get the picture when you put all those combinations together. It's like very earthy combined with water. Those are two elements that create Kapha, and it creates like a sticky type clay substance. And in the body, that is mucus mainly, although it's not only mucus. But we have tons of mucosal membranes in our body all over our tissues, and there are two primary functions. The first is that it protects our tissues. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, we have a very thick lining in our stomach to protect it from all the hydrochloric acid that it produces during digestion.
Right.
That's Kapha, that lining. And the second function is that it creates moisture in the system, which helps with absorption. So you'll notice that you can do a very simple test with yourself at home. If you stick your tongue out of your mouth and let it dry out completely, you can't taste anything. But the moment you add moisture to your tongue, all of a sudden you can taste.
Right.
And that makes Kapha the dominant the water element, which is one of the main elements of Kapha, the dominant element for the sense of taste. And that sense of taste is the basis of all absorption in the body. So when you taste something, your body, it sends a message through your nervous system, and your body knows what's coming, what type of food is coming. And then it begins producing enzymes and secretions that will help you absorb that type of food. So with those two primary functions of Kapha spread throughout your system, you get resilience. Because it's protection. Kapha is protection. Mm-hmm. So kapha protects all your cells, all your tissues, your nervous system, everything from the other doshas. And that's how it maintains the balance. When kapha gets too high, so when you create too much mucus in your system, or there's too much of those qualities we described at the very beginning, the heaviness, the oiliness, the unctuousness, then it suppresses the function of the other doshas. So for example, if you have too much kapha in your stomach, then pitta cannot function properly, and you can suppress your agni, your digestive fire, and then you won't be able to digest your food properly. It won't break down properly. And then that creates more kapha because your body can't convert the undigested food into tissue. And then that's how the disease or imbalance perpetuates in the case of kapha.
Right. And so let's talk now about, well, why does this kapha imbalance occur in the first place? Why is there this aggravation of the mucus and this leading to congestion and then causing problems with digestion?
Many potential causes, but they're all going to they're all going to have the commonalities of those qualities, the oiliness, the unctuousness, the heaviness, the coldness in common.
Right.
So let's take a very classic one, for example. Let's take overeating, for example. Mm-hmm. We eat, and food by its nature is dominantly kapha. So, of course, there are foods that increase vata, there are foods that increase pitta, but just the fact that you're eating something and you're putting something that has some substance and weight into your body,
right,
is kapha in nature. So, let's say I eat something oily, let's say I eat something unctuous, so butter, right? Mm-hmm. That butter, by its nature, is going to be a little bit harder to digest than, let's say, a zucchini or something like that, because of its kapha nature. So I have to have more pitta, or a stronger agni, in my stomach and small intestine mainly, and liver, to be able to successfully break down that butter into constituent parts that my body can use to build tissue. Mm-hmm. After going through the digestive process, after it goes into the small intestine and gets absorbed into the bloodstream, it needs to be pretty broken down for my body to be able to use the parts of that butter.
Right.
If my body cannot break it down, if it's too kaphagenic, then it literally starts clogging all the tiny channels in my intestines. Or if it makes it through my intestines into the bloodstream, it might get stuck in some other smaller channels somewhere else in some other tissue or organ. And because of its sticky nature, it's hard to just get rid of. Our metabolism is very self-sustaining and can clean itself a lot. Mm-hmm. But if a substance gets stuck onto a tissue wall or a tissue lining, it's very hard for our body to get rid of it on its own. So you see that a lot in like congestive heart failure, right? Mm-hmm. The arteries get clogged. Mm-hmm. The actual substance that's clogging the arteries is kapha in nature.
Right.
It possesses those qualities. And it's because we don't have a strong enough agni to process all that kapha, or if like we are overeating, then there's no way anyone's agni can be strong enough to process all that kapha.
Right, right. So what's causing the blockages, like you said, has a kapha-like nature, is in fact ama, which it has that sticky quality.
Kapha and ama have very similar qualities. Mm-hmm. Ama is basically, in a nutshell, kapha that cannot be used by the body.
Right, right. That's a very good way of saying it, yep.
We can also look at a little bit of a different example where kapha comes into play and can cause some problems. So let's take sinusitis or rhinitis, right, which actually is not necessarily caused by a kapha imbalance. It could be caused by a vata imbalance. But let's say someone has an allergy. So they walk out into a field, they inhale the wrong type of pollen for their system. It goes into their lung. And their immune system says, hey, this is no good. We can't deal with this. sends a message to the brain that says, protect the lungs. Don't let any more of this in. And all of a sudden your sinuses start beginning producing a lot of mucus. And then that goes into your nasal cavities and you're super congested. Mm-hmm. It's actually kapha trying to protect the body, but it's overused kapha. It's it's not the root cause, but kapha is trying to perform its function, but actually creating a problem on its way.
Right, exactly. And so kapha, like we said, it causes excessive mucus and congestion, and it can cause also blockages in the body, right, when there's a build-up of this congestion in the body. In general, any blockages in the body can be related to a kapha aggravation.
Yes, so like you could take another example like a tumor, whether it's cancerous or not. A tumor can be a kapha type growth where the body produces too much tissue. So we don't want to, yes, it's true that mucus is definitely kapha, but that's not the only kapha thing. The actual physical structure of tissue in general is kapha. Mm-hmm. And so you can have excess tissue growth in the form of a tumor or a cyst or, something like that. And if it gets big enough, it can block a channel. Right. And then what happens? Then vata cannot flow properly. Mm. And so it has to redirect itself. Right. Which, for the most part, your body's pretty good at doing, redirecting vata. However, if the kapha block is in the wrong place or is dramatic enough in the system, we got to remember that vata is the only dosha that can move. Mm-hmm. Kapha and pitta are, by their nature, inert. Mm-hmm. So if the flow of vata gets changed, it's going to change how kapha and pitta are utilized in your system. Right. And then now you start a compensation pattern. And so on the one hand, that could be a great thing. Kapha can block vata from entering a region that your body is trying to protect, mm-hmm. or that's naturally how channels are created, is by being surrounded by kapha. Right. But if something goes wrong with kapha, then you're going to radically change the structure of your system, and not just in the localized area where the blockage is. It's going to happen throughout the entire system. Right. So yes, and then that leads, like you said, the channels getting blocked and can lead into many more problems. And, it's so true what you say, that kapha is like that, those building blocks. It's responsible for building and growth and construction in the body. Excuse me. And, I want to cover now, we'll come back to how we get rid of those blockages later on. But this, where this flows into now nicely, is into the kapha phase of life. And from birth to puberty being the kapha stage of life, and that the children show all these kapha-like qualities. Can you discuss a little bit about that for us, please? Sure. The kapha phase of life is all about growth. Mm-hmm. You're growing rapidly, everything, that's the focus. The tissues and cells are growing and reproducing, and everything happens a lot faster than it does as an adult. Mm. Once you switch over into the vata phase of life, which is all the way at the end of life, everything starts decaying. It goes the opposite direction. Mm. Whereas the pitta phase of life, everything is transforming, but relatively stable. The reason the first phase of life is the kapha phase of life, and there's so much growth involved, is precisely because the kapha dosha is so active, and because it's so active, everything's growing. Mm. That's why children need a lot of the sweet taste. The sweet taste is the primary taste that increases kapha in the system. Right. So because the sweet taste is made up of the earth and water elements, the same as kapha, exactly. Right? So it's like increases like. Like increases like, mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so, these days in our modern culture, right. We've kind of twisted that into candy, mm-hmm. but that's not really what the sweet taste is. Sugar being the primary, example of what the sweet taste is, but there's healthy ways to eat sugar. And things like grains also have a lot of sweet taste. So wheat carries a sweet taste. Rice is the sweet taste dominant. Most fruit have the sweet taste as the dominant taste. And so children need a lot of this element, these earth and water elements, to continue to fuel their growth until they reach maturity. And at which time they enter the pitta phase of life, where there's less focus on growth and more focus on refining all of the tissues.
Right, exactly. And so with these qualities of Kapha, we can really see in children the qualities that Kapha comes with, like compassion and love. And this is what Kapha is really representative of. Yes.
So Kapha, going into the mental, psychological, emotional realm of Kapha, Kapha is this beautiful dosha that produces all these wonderful qualities in our character, like you mentioned, compassion, kindness, devotion, loyalty, endurance, all those things, and to a large extent enthusiasm as well, and love being the primary one. Love being the quality of connectiveness of all things. And Kapha is all about connection and holding things together. And so you can get on the positive side in children all these wonderful expressions, and they're so pure, right? Because the Kapha is so dominant in the system. On the negative side, which we see in Kapha imbalances, first you get greed, which is connectiveness gone wrong. The desire to connect has been wounded, and so there is this extreme over desire to just hold on to anything that person can possibly get their hands on to feel like there's some level of connection.
Right. So it's a real possessiveness, isn't it, of things, material things, but also it can be of people.
Of people, absolutely. And when people can't be found, then they turn to material things.
Right.
Yeah. And there is sloth on the negative side. And that's because of the heaviness quality of Kapha. And you can pretty easily see the connection between greed and sloth, right? If you accumulate too much, then it slows you down. You can't just move around freely or quickly because you have all these attachments and you're held down by all these things. And so you become sluggish.
Right. And that's a physical and a mental sluggishness as well.
Absolutely. Both physical and mental. So in that attachment and greed cycle, people often put on weight. They hold on to even their own tissue.
Right.
And so you have these positive and negative sides of Kapha, and then what that heaviness can also create is depression.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I wanted to go into now, is the relationship between tamas and Kapha as well when it's aggravated.
Right. So in the last episode I did with you, we talked about the mental quality of Pitta being Tejas and Rajas. For Kapha, it's Tamas, which you just mentioned, and then we'll talk about Tamas and we'll also talk about Ojas at the same time.
Perfect.
So Tamas is the mental quality of Kapha, and that is inertia. And so just think of the earth, think of that element. You can't just move through it. It creates a lot of inertia anywhere it is.
Right.
And so you could think of like a mole or something like that, or an earthworm. They have to move very, very slowly through the earth because there's so much resistance all the time.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the quality of Kapha too, is like that stubbornness as well when it's aggravated. That's what it makes me think aggravated.
Of. Yeah. Exactly. And so that aggravated quality of Kapha on the positive side is endurance.
Yes.
They've embodied that resilience and that internally, so that when it comes to outside forces tearing them down, they're very resilient and resistant. So they get endurance. But on the negative side, it turns into inertia in the system where they can't even get themselves going.
Right.
They can't get up out of bed.
Right.
It's so hard to walk down the street.
Right.
And then in the mind, it's a lot of dark, shadowy, heavy, amorphous, cold thoughts. I just don't know why I exist. Right. Or I don't feel like doing anything. Or, what's the point?
Right.
And it's with that tone and with that heaviness.
Sure.
And I just want to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so the challenge there is that the only way to break through that tamas is to create rajas,
Right.
which is the polarity, and that's more of a pitta vata quality.
Mm-hmm.
And so if, someone were to come into a consultation, they have excess kapha and they're exhibiting that through their character, then one of the things a practitioner has to do is kick their ass a bit.
Right. Stimulate them. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. You got to be a little bit rough and heavy, not heavy. Sorry, that's the wrong word. You got to be a little bit rough and agitating.
Right.
You got to get them going. It's good if you can get them angry, actually, even if it's at you.
Yep.
Because that engages the heat in their body. Once someone gets angry, the liver starts producing a lot of heat. And then in and of itself, that starts breaking down kapha blocks.
Right. You just like sparked the pitta fire and the rajas mental guna as well. Yep.
Right. And so, that's in a consultation setting, but on a just more day-to-day setting, exercise, right?
Right.
That's one of the simplest, best ways to clear kapha blocks. The challenge is often it will take someone to get that person up and out of bed and force them to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you're stuck in a kapha downward spiral, you don't want to exercise. There's no way you're going to do it yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. So you really need to plan something, have a friend, meet a friend somewhere. But yeah, you really need somebody to hold you accountable in order to get you up and out. And that can be hard when you're in that very deep kapha hole, that it can be hard to even think about that, to plan that in advance. So this is where the kapha person really needs a lot of support. I'm going to jump in here for a moment because I want to let you know, if you want support on your Ayurvedic healing journey, then please visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, where I provide consultations and cleanses and online programs to not only bring your body and mind back into balance, but also to educate and empower you on how to take charge of your own health going forward. So if you want that support, please check out the website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and I'll also put a link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the show.
Yes, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because kapha is all about connection, whether they're in a positive state or a negative state. And they do so well in groups, and they are the most loyal, and they will be so devotional when they're on their good side.
Yep.
And all the pitta people out there, and vata people, but mainly pitta people, because they need that, ass kicking, the kapha people.
Yes.
If you have kapha friends, the best thing you can ever do for them is get them up and out.
Yeah, and kapha people are such great friends, because like you said, they're so devoted, they're reliable, they'll always be there. So yeah, you can give back by helping them out here.
Yes, exactly. And it's another great thing. It's and pittas need kaphas, right? Because pittas get judgmental and
have that love and compassion brought out in them.
Right. So
it's a good pairing.
Yeah, it can be a beautiful polarity if people let it be.
Yeah.
And so then ojas, right?
Yes.
Ojas is a physical substance in your body. There's not too much of it in your body, but it's there. And it is the ultimate product of digestion. So your body digests, you eat something, goes in, your body starts to digest it. It turns into plasma, it turns into blood, it turns into muscle, it turns into fat, it turns into bone, it turns into nervous tissue, and then it turns into reproductive tissue. That whole process takes about 40 days. And then it turns into ojas if everything else is working properly. Yeah. It's like the highest octane fuel you've got.
Yeah.
It burns the cleanest. It's everything you want to have in your body.
And we need it. When that ojas is depleted, we're in trouble.
Yeah. When your ojas is depleted, your resilience is down, your immune system's going to start wigging out, and you're going to start getting hollowed out. You're going to start getting fatigued.
Right.
And so we can go back to the pitta burnout, right? That's something that pittas burn out, is ojas.
Right.
And ojas is the essence of kapha. And so kaphas need the pitta to create the high quality ojas, and the pittas need the high quality ojas to make sure that they don't run out of juice.
Right.
So that's why balance is so important here between the doshas.
Mm-hmm.
And kapha is the only way they're ever going to produce high ojas is by maintaining a good level of pitta in their system. And the way to do that is to keep their digestion high. They naturally have a lower flame, so to speak.
Right, right. So it's just this low flame that takes a long time to literally cook and digest and transform the food. And that's why they tend not to have a huge appetite, although they love food. So they tend to eat a lot, but a lot of it is just this grazing or comfort eating, right?
Yes, kaphas are very much comfort eaters, more than either of the other doshas. What happens is if the digestive fire is relatively low, and I'm not even saying imbalanced, just naturally low because of that type of digestion, and you put too much food inside, it's all going to turn into ama.
Right.
And then the lymph glands get stagnant, and, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, everything is just overwhelmed, right, if you're just putting too much in there.
Right. But they're so emotionally tuned in, and they're so deep with their emotions that they go out in the world, and in our culture, there's so much, I wouldn't even say go to the extreme of cruelty or something like that, but sure, there's a lot of pain and suffering and all that stuff, right? Kaphas feel that,
right,
like crazy,
right.
But they're not like vatas, so they're not going to sit there and talk to you about it for 20 hours, right?
Yeah.
So the way they cope, or the way they feel better inside themselves, is by experiencing the joy of food.
Right. So they're literally eating their emotions.
They're literally eating their emotions.
Yeah.
And that creates a heaviness and a sadness and an attachment. And then, if it goes too far, then they start being mean to themselves, and then they really are in trouble.
Right, right. So the big thing for kapha is to really tune into the real signs of hunger. Because I think when I have kapha clients, it's like a lot of times they're not even in tune with what that real sign of hunger is.
Definitely. They have this pattern. Kapha people have this pattern in general where they'll eat a big dinner, and then they'll start digesting it very, very slowly, and the next morning they'll wake up and they won't even be hungry.
Right.
And it'll get to lunch and they still won't be hungry. And then it gets to dinner again and they're pretty hungry now. And so they overeat at dinner because it's the one meal of the day.
Right.
So they're packing all this stuff into this one meal of the day. But that's a very unhealthy pattern because it actually ends up slowing down the metabolism. And what would be a lot better is if they just ate a lot smaller during each meal and made sure that they were hungry by the next meal.
Right. So smaller, lighter meals with like no snacking in between.
Correct. Exactly. And they could skip breakfast if they want to.
Yeah.
They don't have to eat breakfast, but they should definitely be eating lunch and dinner, and they should be relatively light.
Yeah, I agree with you on the breakfast thing because I think, old nutrition advice was always like, you need to have a breakfast. And it was, the one size fits all. And it was so hammered into us that everybody must have a breakfast that when I talk to kapha clients and they're, saying, I'm just not hungry at breakfast. I was like, well, if you're not hungry, don't eat. That's the kind of rule of thumb for kapha. But we need to make sure that kapha is stimulating the body so that the digestion is working efficiently so that they are getting hungry. So let's talk about how we can stimulate the kapha digestive system with not only spices and foods and so on, but also with how they set up their day, right, in tune with the circadian rhythms. Like, for example, getting up early in the morning is really important for kapha, right?
Which is also very hard for them to do because they love sleep.
No, they love it. They hit that snooze button.
They love the snooze button.
Right? And so the longer that they sleep into kapha time is, between 6 and 10 a.m., the more kapha they're going to take on, and they're going to take on that energy throughout the day, right?
Absolutely. They need to be awake before the sun.
Yeah.
And then a great thing to do would be to do sun salutations.
Right, right.
They need that solar fire and that whole circulation and heat buildup in their system before they get into their day, and their mind is taken in all these different places because of what the day demands.
Right, I agree. And even better if they can get up and out of their home and go out and do those activities with other people, like go to a really early morning yoga class, like you were saying, do some sun salutations, that would be great, because the tendency for them to kind of want to go back to bed or sit and relax is very high.
Yeah, that's ideal. And if they can, they should set up something where it's like, their pitta friend knocks on the door at 5:45 a.m.
Drags them out.
Come on, let's go.
And they'll be on time. That pitta friend will be on time.
Right. Drags them out to the early morning yoga class.
Right.
And then now they're set up to have a good day, because now their metabolism, their peristalsis, all that stuff has started working early.
Yes.
And by lunch, they'll be hungry, actually legitimately hungry, not just wanting food.
Right, exactly. And things they could do, in the morning when they're not hungry, maybe they get home after their class or their activity, that maybe having ginger tea to help stimulate the digestive fire, right? That they could take some liquids in to help with that stimulation.
Yeah, definitely. Ginger tea. They can have long pepper, pipali is another good one for kapha.
Yeah.
They can have mint. Mint is a good one, especially during the summer.
Right, and nice and stimulating.
It's very penetrating.
Yeah.
Yep. They can have, what are some other good ones?
Cinnamon is a good one because it's warming, right?
Cinnamon and cardamom.
Yeah.
Both good.
And especially this time of the year, where the holiday time, it's a colder weather, you can find like those cinnamon mixed teas with some clove and some star anise, all those really warming spices.
Absolutely. Any of those classic digestive spices.
Right, or chai.
Cumin. Yep.
Yeah.
Chai is very good.
Right.
Cardamom,
right.
cinnamon, chai. Black tea in moderation. Kaphas are actually probably the only dosha that actually can say with honesty that a little bit of caffeine is good for them.
I know, right? Caffeine, and they can have all the spices in general. Pretty
much. So that's the advantage. So you could sit there with your pitta friend and they'll be very jealous of you. So yeah, kaphas have that thing going, which is great because it plays into their love of food.
Yes. Yes.
They need to avoid the heavy cold stuff like ice cream and too many heavy oils and excess bread and butter and stuff like that.
Right. So I guess for people to think like comfort food, anything that's rich and creamy and soggy and heavy and sticky, like that has those qualities, you need to leave alone.
Yeah, those are out.
Right. Right. Sorry, Kapha.
Sorry, Kapha guys. But hey, enjoy all the cinnamon you want.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And then late night snacking is a big one. Because, like you said, they're eating their big meal in the end of the day, and then there's late night snacking.
Yeah, that needs to be avoided. So the nighttime, you mentioned kapha time in the morning, right?
Yes.
The nighttime kapha time is from 6 to 10 p.m.
Right.
So the moon comes out, the water element starts to increase in the atmosphere in the world, right? The heat's dying down, all that stuff. And kaphas love that time, but it increases their own nature.
Yeah.
And that is not a good time for kaphas to eat.
Yeah.
Kapha is already increasing naturally in the environment and in their own body. Their kapha functions, like you said, in the circadian rhythm, their kapha functions are starting to turn on. Melatonin starting to be produced in the body, all that stuff that's going to put them to sleep. And their digestion, the important part is that their digestion is dropping. Their digestive power is dropping during that time naturally. So even if they think they want food, that's actually an imbalance in their own personal rhythm.
Right.
And it should be balanced out.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of that has to be looked at in the sense that even if they think they're hungry, it may not just be hunger. Of course, it could be thirst, but it could also be emotional, wanting to satisfy and continue to bury those emotions.
Absolutely. That's more often than not. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what needs to be dealt with a lot, especially if kapha is going through a healing process, is helping them to look at these emotions and to start to digest them.
Yeah, and how to digest them is the big challenge. A lot of times kaphas are pretty aware of the pain or the suffering that they're going through.
Yeah.
But they either don't have the will or they don't know what to do about it. And so that's the challenge. That's the big challenge. And that, of course, is going to be dependent on each individual and their own personal life and what they got going on and all that. But usually it's going to involve some kind of action or activity or a restoration of authentic connectivity.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. And it definitely requires support, I think.
And there's a second layer to that, which is really great for kaphas, because as we know, like every dosha needs support, when everyone needs support when they're down and out. But for kaphas, something special happens because they're such supportive people by nature that when they can receive support, it will inspire them to also give support.
Right.
And when they're giving support, they'll feel at their best.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's a bit different than Pitta and Vata. Pittas can receive support and then be like, great, and then go do their thing. Same Vatas can receive, eternal support and feel good.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily have that same inspiration to then turn around and be a super supportive devotee as a kapha.
Yeah. And that's the thing with a person with a high kapha constitution is that they're known for being that person, that the go-to person you can speak to about your problems. They'll be a great shoulder to cry on. They'll be a great person to listen because they're amazing listeners. However, a lot of times they're not getting that listening ear in return.
Yeah. And if you ever need a hug, definitely find a kapha constitution.
Right?
They give the best hugs.
Right. Exactly. So for kapha, it's a lot of self-care. And I think that's what really goes downhill when there's an aggravation. It's a lack of self-care.
A lack of self-care and something's brewing inside.
Right.
And then their tendency is to just go into a dark room and be alone.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing that they can do.
Yeah. Absolutely. So if somebody out there is, resonating with this information and saying, I think I'm, kapha aggravated here, where would you suggest that they start? If they're in that place where they just feel like I'm in a hole and I don't know what to do.
Call up your most pitta friend and say, I need to get out of the house.
Yes.
That would be step one.
Yeah, perfect.
And have some fun.
Yeah.
And experience emotions. So not sadness and depression, the other emotions. Laugh, have fun, but also get angry. If things express anger, get it out of the system. Don't go get through the blocks.
Right.
Move your body as much as possible.
Yeah.
Do group, like we mentioned earlier, any kind of group exercise or group yoga or group chanting or group anything.
Yes.
So that the energy of other people starts moving through them, and that can help them keep their own system moving.
Right.
So restore the flow through their system of both physical and emotional and mental energy.
Yeah, so true. Great tips there.
Start circulating. The circulation's part of it, but then elimination is the other part of it.
Yes.
So once things are circulating well, it's time to eliminate the excess kapha dosha. And that takes some guidance if you can find a practitioner. And it's not just Ayurveda. There are other modalities that have eliminations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it should be relatively gentle. I wouldn't suggest like a colonic or something like that.
No, and it's true what you say about, wanting to eliminate and literally scraping the intestinal walls so you're getting rid of that sticky substances that you were saying earlier that build up on the walls. And that's why, in Ayurveda we use the mung beans because they have that scraping effect on the intestines.
Yeah, mung beans, there are a lot of wonderful herbs and foods that have a scraping effect. And they do a wonderful job. Another one that's popular in Ayurveda is guggulu.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a tree resin. And it has this scraping action. And so it goes through your intestines and very gently starts scraping away excess mucus or things that are stuck to linings that shouldn't be there. Ama, it scrapes away ama.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Kapha needs. Sorry.
That's okay. That's exactly what Kapha needs. And even when they're fairly balanced, they should still do it as a maintenance.
Right. Absolutely. And I want to go back a little bit before we finish up here about, we mentioned kids in the Kapha stage of life. And actually, I just had a question today in the podcast Facebook group about children and, worrying about Kapha buildup or Ama buildup. And I guess in the children in the Kapha phase of life, and particularly if they're of a high Kapha constitution, we have to be very careful about the mucus forming foods, right? At this stage of life, because kids are prone to those congestive illnesses like sinusitis, congestion, colds, coughs, ear aches, and so on.
Yeah, so the mucus always has to be monitored because obviously excess mucus doesn't just mean more growth.
Yeah.
It actually can stunt growth because the doshas aren't balanced.
Right.
So the child showing signs of excess mucus or like those heavy, sticky diseases like earwax buildup, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then very gentle herbs and foods that have a little bit of spice or penetrating potency should be used to gradually clear out that mucus. And most children are, especially those of natural Kapha constitution or Pitta constitution, are going to develop those types of imbalances as they're growing, especially during the winter and early spring.
Yes.
And
so it's Kapha time. Yeah.
Right. And these days, milk can be a wonderful, wonderful food when used properly. But we got to remember that when all these Ayurvedic remedies and texts were created, there was no pasteurization process.
Right.
And all the milk was raw and pretty much straight from the cow or goat or buffalo or whatever. And when you pasteurize milk, it breaks down the fatty components of milk into smaller particles, and they can invade channels more easily. And then that creates ama in the system, and it can block channels. And then if the immune system responds to that, it can create congestion and things like that. The symptoms of a cold,
right,
for example.
Right.
Fever, even in some cases. And so if you can get your hands on high quality milk, if that's allowed in your region or you have access to that, that's unpasteurized, that's ideal.
Right.
And then you want to serve it warm or hot. You don't want to serve it cold. Never drink cold milk, ever, anyone. Then you are using milk properly. The body will digest it properly and gain the benefits of it. Yeah,
because cold milk can be very mucus forming.
Right. And so when you have milk, which is very kaphagenic by its nature, you can compensate by changing some of its qualities via cooking. So when you cook something, you lighten it, you lighten the food, and you warm it up. Obviously, you heat it up.
Right.
So right there, that takes care of the two of the qualities of kapha, heaviness and coldness.
Right. And this is why mothers produce milk, in the animal kingdom and in humans, because it's this kapha-rich food that's going to help that animal or that baby grow and in the kapha stage of life.
Yes. And when you think about it, a mother's milk is very warm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it contains, it's built for the human baby. So it contains everything that baby needs.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's been through a cooking process already because the pitta in the mother's body has transformed that milk into a substance that the baby can use.
Yes. Exactly.
So we don't only have to think about cooking as putting something over a flame. Cooking is a transformation that occurs in a substance to make it digestible.
Thank you very much for covering that. So, Victor, thank you so much for all this information today. Is there anything else you wanted to share about kapha before we finish up?
The only thing I want to say more about kapha is that kapha creates a sense of beauty. And it's very lush in its nature and full and robust. And so without kapha, life would be very dry.
Yes.
And so my message to everyone who has high kapha constitutions is that people perceive beauty in our modern world, at least in, America, as more pitta vata.
Yeah.
But the essence of beauty actually comes from kapha.
Yes, I agree.
And so without kapha, there's no beauty. And so everyone who has a kapha constitution should rejoice because they're the ones that make life juicy.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, Victor, and I totally agree. And the beauty inside and out, they have those beautiful, endearing qualities of love and compassion and loyalty and so on. And they have this beautiful skin, beautiful hair, beautiful eyes. So I totally agree with you, and thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so before we finish up, Victor, can you tell us where people can find out more about you and what events do you have coming up, or where can they find more information?
So I'm a Ayurvedic doctor at Pacific Coast Ayurveda, which is located in Walla, California, which is about 3 hours north of San Francisco. And it's a small oceanside town, very beautiful, a lot of kapha. And I'm part of a larger collective called the Center for Applied Consciousness, and we do a lot of yogic activities. We do a lot of teaching and Ayurvedic and yogic. And we have a series of events locally, but one that might reach a broader audience is we are hosting an Ayurvedic and yogic retreat in Bigur, Spain, in May 3rd to May 8th.
Great.
For $998. It includes lodging, breakfast, and lunch, and we'll have a bunch of wonderful retreat activities and a lot of fun and a lot of learning at the same time. Fantastic. So if anyone's interested, they could always contact me. We have a website, pcayurveda.com. I think, Colette, you post all that information.
Yes,
right?
I'll put all those links in the show notes, absolutely. That retreat sounds amazing.
Yeah, it should be wonderful. And Bigur is also a very kapha beautiful place.
Wonderful. Well, Victor, thank you so much for your time today. And it's always fun talking to you. And I look forward to having you back because we need to talk about Vata next.
We have to complete the trilogy.
Absolutely. So thanks so much. You always make it very interesting. And I appreciate your time. Take good care of yourself. Until next time.
Until next time. Thanks, Colette.
Okay. Ciao for now.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ayurvedic Dr. Victor Briere, and I will put all those links in the show notes to Pacific Coast Ayurveda, the Center for Applied Consciousness, and of course that wonderful Ayurveda and yoga retreat happening in Spain in May 2020. So check out the show notes for all those details. And also, if you want any support around your Ayurvedic healing journey, I have online consultations, cleanses, and programs to help you find balance and to educate and empower you to take charge of your own health so that you can go forward and thrive in life. So check out the link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you think this episode will be helpful to some friends or family, particularly those with a high kapha constitution, please share it with them. And until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and ciao for now.